Autumn 1879. A mining crew climbs down a lead shaft outside Galena, Illinois, once one of the richest towns in the state, now shrinking fast as the easy ore runs out. The shaft's been working since the 1840s boom, back when this stretch of Illinois produced nearly 80% of the country's lead. By 1879, what's left was deep, narrow, and strange. The miners are Cornish trained, men who know rock the way you know a language you grew up speaking. And some crews working these deep levels reported something that didn't sit right. Tunnels below the official workings finished smoother than any hand tool should leave them. Some, by a few accounts, closed off rather than simply left behind. What followed was a pattern of quiet dismissal that still shows up in old survey records. A line or two, then nothing. And the real explanation, when I went looking, had almost nothing to do with the buried civilization story you've probably heard. I found it by accident, reading old mining reports about Cornish smelting technique, when I hit a throwaway line about a wall of anomalous stone a company chose not to drill through. No drama, just a recommendation to move the crew somewhere more profitable. The word surveyors used for stone like that was country rock, anything around the ore that wasn't worth digging for. Officially it just meant geological filler, but buried in that one term is a habit. Anything strange that wasn't the lead itself got filed under the same shrug. Not because no one noticed, because noticing didn't pay. Here's what actually explains the smooth, unnatural walls. This ground isn't ordinary rock, it's karst. Limestone that groundwater has been dissolving for hundreds of thousands of years, carving caves and crevices long before anyone picked up a tool here. About 270 million years ago, hot mineral-rich brine got pushed north through the Illinois basin by mountain building pressure from hundreds of miles away. That brine moved through porous rock, hit this limestone, cooled, and dropped lead and zinc straight into cracks the water had already carved out. The ore didn't sit in rough stone. It formed inside cave systems, smooth, water-sculpted voids. A miner expecting raw blasted rock, and finding a polished cave wall instead, could easily mistake dissolution for craftsmanship. This isn't a theory built to explain away anomalies after the fact. Geologist Harold Bain documented these crevice deposits back in 1905 in a U.S. Geological Survey bulletin that first mapped this district's mines in detail. J. Harlan Bretz, working for the Illinois State Geological Survey, spent years in the 1930s specifically cataloguing caves in this exact rock formation because miners kept reporting the same thing. So the smoothness has a name, and it's been published for over a century. That still leaves the other question, why some passages were supposedly sealed off instead of just left alone, and that's where the story gets less comfortable. Here's where the history actually gets uncomfortable, and it has nothing to do with sealed doors underground. Long before 1879, the Meskwaki, Ho-Chunk, and Saucon Fox had been working this exact ore for over 1,000 years, trading it along river routes that reached communities hundreds of miles away. When French explorers arrived in the late 1600s, they didn't discover lead mining here. They found it already running, by people who'd been doing it longer than European memory of the place went back. The American takeover wasn't a negotiation. In 1822, the federal government handed the first official mining lease here to Richard Johnson, brother of a sitting vice president, with no prior tie to this land at all. And it came with armed guards, sent specifically to discourage the Fox people from disputing a claim to ground they'd worked for generations. That pattern repeated for a decade. Settlers leased plots, mines multiplied, and as the surface ore thinned out, miners pushed into land that was never ceded. Tension became the Winnebago War in 1827, then the Black Hawk War in 1832, after which native communities were removed from the region almost entirely. In about 6 years, the town's population went from 200 people to 10,000. Almost none of that wealth reached the people whose knowledge of this ground made mining possible in the first place. By the time crews were chasing played-out shafts in the 1870s, the people who'd read this landscape correctly first were already gone. Not through some slow drift of progress, through a specific sequence of leases, guards, and 2 wars inside about a decade. You don't need a hidden civilization under Galena to find something unsettling here. It already happened in daylight, and it's sitting in records anyone can read in 5 minutes. It just doesn't come with a mystery hook. I want to be careful about what I'm actually claiming here. I'm not arguing there's a lost civilization sealed under Galena, or that 19th century miners found something science can't explain. The welded iron doors story doesn't hold up. The smooth, strange-looking passages in old accounts have a mundane explanation. This ground is carved by groundwater for hundreds of thousands of years, and ore was deposited directly into those caves by ancient mineral-rich brine. A solution cave can look hand-finished to someone expecting raw blasted rock. That's not a cover story. It's published geology. What I am arguing is smaller and more honest. The real strangeness in Galena was never about what got hidden underground. It's about what got left out of the story above, whose knowledge of this land got quietly written out, the same way a surveyor writes country rock instead of asking a better question. Picture that shaft today. The head frames are gone, cattle graze where they stood. Walk the bluffs above Galena, and you'll see exactly what the Ho-Chunk and Meskwaki saw. Limestone folding into itself in a way it never does 20 miles east, untouched by the glaciers that flatten the rest of the state. We've lost the ability to tell this region's history as one continuous story, instead of 2. A clean break between a before and an after. Not because the records don't exist, because the break was useful. It let everyone after it inherit the wealth without inheriting the debt. So why do we call what happened here a lead rush, a story of pioneers and prosperity, instead of a story of 1,000 years of knowledge taken along with the ground it came from? Because one version sells postcards, the other doesn't.